It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the owner of Downright Sports Talk podcast, Brett Reed. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. You're my second interview ever. This is awesome.
That's amazing. Can you talk about, of course, how you knew that you wanted to start the podcast?
I don't know if I knew I wanted to start one. All right, so this has to go back to the 90s when I was a kid. My cousin, DJ Chase, who was a DJ out of New York, had his own record label. He had an old Gateway computer, and he would say, let's go downstairs and pretend to do radio, because as he would tell me, even when we were kids, and I'm talking in single-digit numbers, he would say, you just have diarrhea in the mouth. I'm going to just go play music. You're going to talk. And we would go on this Gateway computer, and it would let you record up to about 40 seconds at the most. And we would just pretend to do radio. And then when he got his DJ equipment around 10 or 11, we would actually make cassette tapes. And I would just talk about movies. I would talk about the weather. I would talk about the floor. Like, I just make up crap. It was an excuse really for him to play music. I was just the dead air time. So about 2009, he calls me up, and I was in Pennsylvania, and he's still in New York, and he goes, hey, I figured out we could do radio. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, we could do radio on the internet. And I was like, okay. And he was like, just come to the city, I'll show you how it's done. And I got there, and at the time when I came up with the idea of doing Downright Sports, title I came up with then, and the title's a play on a record company we tried to create together called Downright Entertainment. So my lazy self just took entertainment off and put sports on there. And my original co-host was a guy named John Condi, who I wish I was still doing the show with today, because the original idea was I would be host kind of and like John just spew. Anyway, John didn't want to travel back and forth to New York. I did the show for probably about 8 months, and then it flamed. We just stopped doing it. I moved back to Virginia, and around 2014, 15, he goes, I need you to do Downright Sports for me again. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, I can, once again, his wheels are spinning, do the show, send me the show, it'll be on iTunes. Sure enough, he did that, and then I've been doing the show since 2015, and whether it's been a podcast form or it's been a YouTube form, because the original Downright Sports recreation or reboot in 2015 was just strictly YouTube, and I wanted visuals and all this stuff, and then I did a side podcast probably about 2017 called I'm Just Talking. Eventually, I just turned it all into Downright Sports, and it made my life easy, and I got tired of making topics for everything. But yeah, I've always loved sports since my aunt introduced me to baseball when I was 8, and I love the history of it. Bob Costas, Howard Cosell, who I never got to hear because I'm only 36, and I think he's been dead before I was born. But Joe Buck, all those guys influenced me to want to do what I do. My ultimate goal one day is to call a baseball game like, I can't think of his name right now. He used to call the Dodger games, beyond the point, but I love the idea of just broadcasting sports. And sometimes people listen to my show and they go, oh, I didn't know that. And I love that, oh, I said something somebody didn't know. But yeah, Downright Sports, I love doing it. I call it my therapy. That's what I call it.
Of course, what sports do you cover on Downright Sports?
I will cover on a slow week, I could cover basketball, football, and baseball. I can really probably talk baseball every day, but I don't think it'll bore my audience. But the total idea is, for example, a lot of like the Olympic stuff, right, that was going on. So I'll cover that. I'll make that either my A segment or my segment 1 or segment 2 of the show, and that requires me doing a little research and studying if it's going to be A or it's going to be 1 or 2, the first or second segment. If I don't know the research, I'll do it in the third segment because I can just ramble for 10 minutes. The third segment is normally only 10 minutes. But primarily, I cover the big 3: baseball, football, basketball. I will cover college. I will cover fighting. I will cover, like this week, my show, cheap plug. This week, I'm doing the A segment will be the WNBA preview. I'm going to preview the WNBA. So I try to cover everything. What I really want to get good at is covering sports that people don't know as much about and trying to bring it to the light in some way, shape, or fashion. I have a trouble covering hockey. I want to, but I can't pronounce like at least 95% of the names in hockey. So that's why I just don't cover it. I'll talk about it, but I won't cover it.
Of course, what is that like, obviously getting to cover the main sports like NFL, NBA, college football, and basketball, but also getting to cover those sports like women's soccer, women's hockey?
I think it's so important. The big sports is what, brings the listeners to the radio, or the phone rather. I'm so old. The phone. But covering the women's sports is a secret passion because I think in so many instances we miss out on, like, for example, everybody talks about how the men's soccer team never makes it, but nobody talks about like how great the women's soccer team has been since they've been around. But the men, if the men don't qualify for the World Cup, that will be the bigger story than the women winning another World Cup. Like the limelight should be more centered towards like how great they are. Or like, for example, now we have the first woman manager in baseball. I tried to actually get her on my show. I know it was a wild card, but I reached out to her on Instagram, was like, hey, will you do my show? Way before it was like I saw I was like, oh, if I could just get her, but she's big time now. So I'll just take I'll take her towel guy. But I think it's so important to show how sports brings worlds together, no matter who you are. The guy down the street, the kid down the street, your neighbor upstairs, no matter where you come from, guess what? You got one thing in common. You either love or hate the Yankees. You either love or hate the Lakers. You either love or hate Duke and UNC, but you could talk about it, and the common denominator is sports. You know what I'm saying? It's not a hatred thing. It's like a love-hate thing. Like, oh, you root for them? Okay. But you when you see somebody roots for a team you don't like, you do it with a smile, not like, oh. It's like, oh, you root for them? Okay. It's like that.
Of course, what is it like, obviously, covering a weekly show?
It's difficult. It's really, it takes a lot, especially when you work a full-time job. So for me, I record the show on Tuesdays. I do a live Facebook feed, and then that feed is what you see. But the show itself, I start prep work probably Friday, Saturday, the week before. Especially if it's a big topic I want to do, I start prep work Wednesday. But the show is recorded Tuesdays, and it's put out Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. But the podcast is available Wednesday. But I start prep work immediately after. I give myself like 24 hours to decompress, and then I'm automatically, all right, what is something? If it's a slow sports week, that's when I open up the vault a little bit and I start looking for things like historical factors, debate stuff, LeBron versus Jordan or something like that. That one always gets everybody's mouth watering. Or I'll do like a few years ago, to this day, it's still one of the highest viewed videos I have on YouTube, which is it's great. but I did a top 25 WNBA players of all time. Most viewed show I've ever, and it's crazy. But like I'll do like so when the summertime comes, I'm gonna have more like top 25s or who's better or whose era was better or cultural significance and stuff like that. So that's what goes. Once I put the show together in my head, then I try to find, all right, what ways can I not offend people? Because I don't want to say something and then like I don't want to turn anybody away. So that's the other thing. So now I gotta consciously weave out stuff here and there, and then I'll sneak in. What way can I get underneath somebody's skin? I don't want to offend anybody. How can I get underneath their skin and make them? Because I don't care why you watch or listen. Honestly, you can listen to me dislike me. I just want you to listen. I don't really care. So that's, creating the show it's not time. I love doing it. So that's why it's not an issue. I really love doing it. As you can see here, this was happened to be sitting next to me. This is like one. This is the layout for one show from last week, and then to give you an idea, this is literally this entire year. So like, there's work that goes into it, but I don't consider it work. I just consider it fun. You know what I mean? I literally call it my therapy. That's how I view it.
Of course, how do you come up with most of your topics?
An acorn normally hits me in the head. No, I try to, Sports Center is, we have in my house, we have YouTube TV. The number one channel is the Hallmark channel, thanks to my fiance. And then the number two channel is ESPN. So I wake up in the morning, I watch the regular news to see what the weather is, and then I go right into ESPN. And I filter out a lot of their nonsense, and then I look for a topic. I'm like, ooh. So let's back up for 1 second. The whole theme of my show is supposed to be a show for fans. I'm a sports fan. Let me talk to sports fans. So many, so when you watch ESPN, Stephen A., when you watch Fox, the Skip Bayless, then this one works for that one, and they all have agendas. We're sports fans. You could come and watch and listen to my show because I'm a fan. So I don't get to sit down with the pros. I don't have a relationship with them, so I don't care. So the first thing I do is I go, what's a cool topic everybody could get behind? So the NBA playoffs is going on right now. This will literally make up the bulk of my show until June. And like right now, best topic, Brooklyn is about to get swept. I can talk about that for 40 minutes. I won't, but I can talk about that for 40 minutes. So I'll take that, circle that, and then what else can I talk about? And then I do branches. And then I'll look at stuff like Tyson Fury may retire. That could be a segment. The Yankees, like if I wanted to, I could talk Yankees all day. I don't do that, but I could. So I just try to see what the biggest stories are, because in a world where TikTok and Instagram and everything is quick, I have to talk about a topic that's still relevant within the news cycle, at least as my lead segment. Going into the show, like segments 2 and 3, I talk about whatever I want. So segment 1 is always like something to get everybody's, beak a little wet. The next segment is stuff I rather cover, stuff that I think is important. So yeah.
Of course, as you talked about topics like Mike Tyson retiring and Tyson Fury. Do you also cover boxing and UFC in your podcast?
I cover the popular stuff with UFC. Everybody, I think I need to cover more because everybody's always like, "Oh, you don't cover fighting." I don't cover it as much because I don't see it as much. Big fights, I'll pay for. Little fights, prelims, I watch. But fighting is not what it used to be. So in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was easy to cover fighting because the best fighters always fought, number one. The best fighters were, you've seen them, number two. The best fighters were winning. Outside of Tyson Fury, and let's just use UFC, for example, John Jones is still one of the baddest fighters on the planet. We don't see it. What has it been, 2-3 years since we've seen him? Conor McGregor's lost his last two. We haven't seen him in the ring. And then other fighters, like the chain of who's champion and stuff like that is so quick. I just don't feel like, for me personally, like I'll watch it, you hype it up, and I want to see it. But like right now, what is he, the Korean Zombie? He's got me intrigued, but I think he lost his last fight. So it's once he gets more of a rhythm going, yeah. But I'm not gonna to make it up as I go along. I'll just be a fraud. So that's why I don't really cover it as much. I cover the big stuff, but if it's just happening for the sake of happening, I'm not gonna cover it.
How did you get your podcast broadcast on sports radio?
Luck, honestly. The first, none of my, funny enough, my show is on zero sports internet things. It's on zero. I'm on more music-based networks or stations, and I couldn't tell you why. I always go on Instagram. The Dynasty Radio, run by Kim Dynasty, she is the first station since my cousin to give me a call. She was like, "Hey, I want you to be on my station." And I was like, "Okay." And I looked at her station. I'm like, I don't fit anywhere in this station. I'm the only sports show. And she goes, exactly. Like, I need that. She was basically like, I have all these talk shows that are just talking about the same thing. You'll be different. So it's pretty cool to be on hers. And then the station that hit me up, Track Radar Radio. It's in the name. Like, I'm the only sports show I think on there. Fab Radio. I think it's out of Chicago. Fab 90. I got it written down. I can't remember it. There's too many. Fab 94.5. I'm the only sports show on there. So I'm an actual sports channel has not contacted me, but the others have, and I'm cool with that because I think, okay, I like to be that only one on there, and I think it's pretty cool. So.
What was that feeling like when you got that first announcement that you made a radio show?
The first time I told people I was doing it, the follow was a lot of why. That was what I got a lot of. Oh, that's what you want to do? People who know me go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That sounds right. People who don't know me, so like my family knows me, and they just go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then so my mother and father, they support me, but they support me in a very odd way. So instead of them like, oh, that's fantastic, it's like, well, so when I told them I was doing your show, the first thing my mom's mouth is, well, don't or cough. I'm like, what? She's like, you cough sometime on your show. And I'm like, I can't help it. I'm talking for an hour. She's like, yeah, don't do that. Nobody needs to hear that. I said, okay. Or my dad, or if I tell my dad, he's like, yeah, that's good. That's good. This is how you need to do it. So my parents, I should call them producers because they give me more notes than anybody. But Allie, who's my fiance, we've been together 3 years. When we first got together, obviously I was doing the show, and it was weird for me to be like, so I do a podcast. And she was like, awesome. And I was like, oh, you don't think it's strange? She was like, no, not at all. And then we moved in together, and I would do the podcast, and I would she was like, why are you talking so low? And I was like, well, I don't want to wake you up. She's like, I don't even know that you're in the house half the time. And I was like, well, I don't want to disturb your neighbors. And she was like, listen to me. You talk like you're talking to me. You don't lower your voice, anybody else. She's the first person to kind of like, just talk like every time you do a show, you talking to me. So every time I do my show, I'm talking to her. And she doesn't watch sports unless I drag her. Like, she did my March Madness bracket tournament contest I did this year for my show. She actually won, but the reason why she picked Kansas is because of the mascot. So I go, who'd you pick? They got a bird. I think they're called the Jayhawks. I said, you got to be kidding me. And then she made it to the championship, that pure fluke. But the point is, so I try to talk to people like her who know jack squat about sports, and for an hour I can get them interested. But the people who I want to care about it. Others are coming around. More people are like, oh, but some people that like that, know me through my life from various variations, I think they still kind of like, this guy does a podcast, he does a radio show, and it's on channels. You can listen to it in other places. I think it still like blows their mind. I love it. I don't take it for granted because it could go away like that. The fact I'm doing your show right now is like, I did your show, did another show, the Sun Kids podcast last week, and it's the greatest moments ever for me. So yeah, I think it's awesome. And honestly, at the end of the day, I really don't care what anybody thinks because I like doing it for me. So
Who are some people that you would love to interview for your podcast?
all right. So it's not who you think. Number one on my list, the older I get, I want to talk to Charles Barkley. I really just want to turn the microphone and let him talk for me. Like Charles Barkley. I really want to sit down. It's tough. People I like to sit down with: Charles Barkley, Ken Griffey Jr. Some people have passed away. I would love to have talked to Hank Aaron. I would like to talk to people like Sugar Ray Leonard, George Foreman, Candace Parker of the Chicago Sky, Liz Claiborne, who now just signed with the Los Angeles Sparks. Goodness, there's a list of people. I really want to talk to some. There are athletes that, Bill Walton, I think, is number one on my list.
Of course, who are some of those professional athletes that you would love to interview, and what would one of their questions be that you would ask them?
Like current athletes? Right now. So it may get me punched in the face, but I would love to interview currently right now Kevin Durant. Look him square in the face and ask, does he really enjoy playing the game of basketball, or is this like facade being this like just I don't know why I'm the way I am? Is it like an act? Is he putting it on because he doesn't want people near him? Like, I generally care, but like that's who I would like. I would like today. He's the only person. Like, I really don't want to interview anybody, but he's the one. Sit down, KD. Let's just talk. You tell me your story, and I wouldn't do things like ask him like crazy questions. I generally like to know like, is he upset the way certain things are, and just let him tell his story. But coaches, I would like to interview coaches. I'd love to interview Joe Torre. I would love to interview Roy Williams. I would love to interview Bill Belichick. I would love to interview Becky Hammond. Like, there's certain people like you just want to sit down. Like in my brain, when I'm old and gray, I want to do those Barbara Walters sports interviews. Like that's what I want to do.
What is something that you learn now that you didn't know before starting the podcast?
I still don't think I know anything, actually. All right. So in all honesty, what I didn't know was when I first started that it doesn't just happen overnight. You get blinded by so-and-so started in his basement and now he's here. And then you start to doubt, like, are you doing anything right? But something somebody told me a long time ago was, if one person's listening, that's all you need. And that's kind of what my brain is. So if I can just, if I learn to appreciate the little things, appreciate the fact that I have the opportunity to do this, appreciate I get to sit down with you. So I learned to just appreciate it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Just a nice little ride.
What are some of your future plans for Downright Sports?
Keep growing it, honestly. I'm fortunate at the May 21st, I'm gonna get to do the show from Greensboro, North Carolina, believe it or not. Be at a conference called Hip Hop and Hoops, and it's the first time I'm ever invited to something like this, so the show will be broadcasting there. And I just want to keep growing it. I want the show to be bigger. I don't need it to be PTI, even though if it is, I'm not going to turn it down. But I want it to be a place where fans can come and just listen and interact about sports, and a place that people are just comfortable with. Downright Sports. I listen to that. So that's all I just wanted to grow. honestly, I wanted to just grow and just continue on to be what it is. I don't want to change anything. Unless ESPN calls tomorrow and is like, hey, we want to purchase Downright Sports. We're making all the rules. By the way, here's a bag of money. I'll take that and shut up and do whatever they tell me because, but realistically, I just want the show just to grow. I don't care how fast or slow. I've been doing it forever. So now it's just a part of me. It's my wee little baby at this point.
What advice would you give future people looking to start their own sports talk podcasts?
Patience. Develop patience. Creativity. I think if you were starting a podcast today, any version, and you came to me and you asked me how would you do it, I would tell you, number one, you have to be into. It has to be as much a part of you as you are a part of it. Don't be anybody. Don't try to fake who you are. Like if you try to go on in and try to copy somebody else, it's cool to take ideas, but don't mimic it because then you're just going to fail because people are going to see you for what you are. Be creative. Don't be afraid to embarrass yourself. I would do fake interviews on my show at one point, and I would do the voices. And my mom listened to one show, and she goes, "Don't do that." And I was like, "Why?" She was like, "Don't do that." And I was like, "I think it's funny." And she's like, "Don't do that." I'm gonna go back to doing it, but like, don't be afraid to make fun of yourself. If you're trying to do a show and you're trying to be the cool kid in the room, it won't work and it won't resonate because especially with podcasting is so intimate. People select their podcast like they select shoes. It has to fit comfortably. They need to be comfortable in it. They need to feel like, people even want to listen to a podcast for multiple reasons. Going to sleep, long car rides, cleaning their house, or motivation or information. I believe those are the 5 things people are listening for. You need to be able to cover one of those 5. And that's what I would tell somebody. And the 6th thing I would tell them, you need to do it you have to have fun while doing it. If it gets to a point where it's not fun anymore, stop doing it.
Of course, what advice would you give those sports talk podcasts such as ourselves that does it daily?
Entertain. Your first factor, number 1, you got to be entertaining. Number 2, if you like it, that's fine. Because if you like it, you can sell it to other people. Don't talk about crap you're not interested in. Don't try to cover things you know nothing about. Stay in your lane and go there. Now, eventually, look to challenge yourself. But if you know in your head for however long, you're doing an hour, 2, 3, 4, you need to know within that time period, you need to know what you're talking about. That's the biggest thing. Have fun with it. Everything I think in life, you need to just have fun. If you're not having fun while doing something, find whatever it is to have fun in. But if misery is your fun, then have fun in misery. But everything you need to do is just have fun and be experimental, most importantly.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with your podcast at?
Everywhere. So I'm going to give you my best wrestling promo, okay? So basically, you can listen to Downright Sports starting every Wednesday at 12 o'clock. The podcast drops. And then you can listen on DJ Chase Radio at live365.com Wednesdays. Thursdays at 8 o'clock p.m., you can listen to Downright Sports at DynastyRadioNY.com, your number 1 source for hip-hop and R&B and soul, except on Thursday when it's the home of everything sports. And then Saturday belongs to Downright Sports because starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, you could go to Fab 94.5, The Hits, or you could go to Fab 94.5, The Hits with a Z.com. And then you can finish up the Saturday at 3 p.m. at Trap Radar Radio, which you can listen to at FleetRadioNetwork.com. Go to TikTok, Downright Sports. You will see me do some of the dumbest things out there. I have done videos where I'm pretending to be Ric Flair. I will do some sports, like quick pop-up stuff. I got a video of me and my dog. I have a bunch of videos of me and my dogs, quite frankly. But yeah, you go to TikTok at Downright Sports. Go to YouTube, Downright Sports, to watch videos. So if you like listening to the show, but you want a quick synopsis, just go to YouTube. Check us out at Facebook at Downright Sports, our fan page. My Twitter, Brent Reed 18. It's the only thing that's not Downright Sports. And then email the show. Whatever you want, just email the show at downrightsports11@gmail.com. I don't really care. You can say whatever you want. It's my choice whether I want to read it or not. All I say is, if you don't want to respond, I suggest you don't respond negatively. But yeah, you can find me in all those places. And as far as the podcast goes, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Google Play, Radio Public, Anchor, Stitcher. The show is everywhere.
Here again, Brett Reed, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with Downright Sports.
Thank you. Thank you again for this opportunity, and feel free to reach out, and I'll promote yours or mine. It doesn't have to be the other way around, but I like to help out other sports podcasts in any way I can. But thank you again, Brandon.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Brett Reed, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with Downright Sports.
You too. Thanks, man.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.